Okay, now ANC Women's League President Bathabile Dlamini will appear before the ANC's Integrity Commission voluntarily. That's according to the party's Treasurer General Paul Mashatile. He's currently addressing the media as we speak on the outcomes of the meeting of the party's National Executive Committee, which took place this past weekend. Now, at the session, a decision was taken to disband the ANC Women's League's NEC. Let's discuss some of these issues now with public policy specialist at the Wits School of Governance, Pooe. TK, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Can we just start here first? What would it mean for the ANC that the Women's League's NEC has now been disbanded? And we always find ourselves talking about these issues because of the ANC step-aside resolution. In this case, regarding Bathabile Dlamini, who was the president of the Women's League, and she was found guilty of perjury. Hi, TK, are you there? Oh, the line just let us down as we were crossing there to TK Pooe. I'm going to try again. Maybe it's unfrozen now. TK, are you there? Did you hear my question?
Yeah, yes, I did hear it, Pradhan.
Okay, let's go ahead then. What's your answer?
Well, I think two things, because I think the Treasurer General was at pains to stress that they're not disbanding the Women's League, they're just disbanding the executive. But I guess some might say that how then can the ANC you think exist without, the Women's League exist without an executive? And again, it stems from the fact that from the beginning, this issue of the step-aside thing was not really well thought out. That is to say, it's a good practice in theory, which is to say, if you've done something wrong, do step aside. But I think it requires that an institution have the relevant legislation and the relevant, moral superiority to do that. And I think because the ANC has neither, you find the situation we have now where, yes, Ms. Bathabile Dlamini has voluntarily decided to go up there. But the question is to say, what about other people who've now been elected, if you think of what's happened in Durban? So I think it creates more confusion than anything else. And it would be really good if they just decided to say, listen, what is the original intention of what this is about, and can we just enforce the original action? And I think that's where the problem really stems from, that they cannot actually enforce what they originally want to do because it covers so many things and it has so much confusion within it that this is going to become the order of the day as we move towards the policy conference and also the national elective conference in December.
Yeah, because you're already hearing some noise. You're saying the step aside is being used to target certain individuals. And we saw recently, I think was it both in KZN and in Mpumalanga, ANC party leaders vying for party positions in those provinces, but having been charged or facing charges, serious charges of murder, allegations of corruption. And do you think the party should be discussing this thing further?
No, it shouldn't. What the party should be asking the question is to say, what does it mean to be an ANC leader? And actually stress and actually spell out what does that mean? Does it mean that you actually have to understand how the economy works? Does it mean that it's very hard to say morality. Let's just say, I think in the absence of saying morality, let's say you need to have good standing within community. I think that's what the conversation should be about. It's about what does it really take for you to become an ANC member? And more importantly, what does it take for you to become a leader in the 21st century? You put all that together and you say, this is what the bar looks like and who qualifies to have it. Because in retrospect, and that's what's actually happening here, it's almost as though they can't come up with a decision. So they're putting many pieces together. And as they put in many pieces, I can guarantee you it's not going to work. Because what you're going to then start seeing is, and we started to see it a bit with the I don't know if you call him the current or the former Secretary General, Mr. Shula, where he's actually taking many of these things to court. So I think maybe a better way, if the ANC was really serious about building itself up, because that's one of the things the Treasurer General spoke about, saying we need to almost build the ANC up. We need to really get closer to community. Everybody knows what's wrong with the ANC. We don't need the ANC to tell us what's wrong. We can all see it. What's actually missing is for them to say, listen, we really do want to have a high bar what it means to be a leader who represents the ANC and who the community can trust. And this is what we mean. And this is the only way you become a leader. But I think that's not the conversation happening. And this is unfortunately, what's called navel gazing, where they don't want to deal with the actual problems which this party is facing.
Now, the ANC is the governing party, and its policies currently are those that will find expression into government as the majority party. A few weeks ago, they announced that they're going to be issuing their policy conference discussion documents and make them public, and they're going to be inviting public comment. Should we, as the public, be excited about this?
I'll answer it in two ways. One, I'll say I think the ANC on this issue need to be commended. It's actually one of the few, if not the only political party in South Africa that actually invites people to comment on its policies. I guess it's by virtue of being, like you said, the head honcho in government. However, if you actually study what's happened over the last policy conferences for the last 3 times, you find that a lot of those policies actually don't find expression in government. So the question becomes, is this really just a simple talk show? Because if I'm not mistaken, the last big resolution which was taken was to say things such as the National Reserve Bank will be nationalized. Where are we standing on that? Last time I checked, the Reserve Bank is still a solo act. So the key question, and I think we really have to ask the ANC, is to say, you always have this every 5 years. But here's maybe a challenge. Instead of you having these every 5 years, start with maybe telling us, what did you achieve over the last time you had this policy conference? What was achieved, what was not achieved, and how do you think you created, and what does the international community look like, or let's say the political economy look like for what you're suggesting? Because sometimes the ANC seems to make these beautiful sounding documents, in absentia of what society really wants. South Africans want 3 things: employment, security, and look, the ability to actually have safe communities. And for me, it seems that they're missing that part. So in the absence of them doing this, I think it's a talk shop. It's going to be, look at what we can do. We commend you for it, but I think they're missing the point.
Thank you very much for your insights and your time this afternoon, as usual. That's TK Pooe, public policy specialist at the Wits School of Governance.